added, we've carved out 10 minutes at the beginning to give a very quick update on Gaza. So we are gonna, I promised I wouldn't speak too long for the introduction, and we are gonna start, like I said, pretty much on time as soon as we see people arriving. I also want to take this time to introduce Anna Stone. Anna, can you turn on your camera if you haven't yet? Great. So Anna Stone is our long-awaited, much-awaited, not so long actually, but much-awaited Riga for the MENA, some people say MENA, some people say ASRO region. She's based in Cairo, and she has come in after Tema's departure. So, and also Adi is not here, I think, but just to also say Adi, who was our IM for Sudan, is now our regional IM. So we now have a complete team sitting in Cairo. So Anna and Adi. But Anna, do you want to say a couple of words before we start talking about Gaza, just about yourself and a little introduction?
Sure. Thanks, Jennifer, for the welcome, and good afternoon to everyone. It's great to be joining. I'm not sure, a bit about myself. I worked in GBV for, gosh, almost 20 years. I've just finished up a number of years in Zambia, and before that I had a role with UNICEF, and before that had a global role with NRC as their global GBV, but then a global protection advisor. I'm familiar with this current region that I'm sitting in, having spent time in Iraq and Gaza, but also provided support to a number of other countries in the region, such as Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, and a few others. So very much looking forward to getting to know everyone and being of support to the team here in ASRO. Thank you.
And well-timed is what we're all saying. Anna Stone has really had to hit the ground running in a serious way. And I just want to also just say very quickly, a big, huge thank you to Stephanie from our coordination team, who after Tema left, really stepped in. She was surged full time to support Gaza and then to support Anna as she onboarded. And as you're aware, our monthly update does include introductions. So you'll hear more about Anna in that introduction, but really a big thank you to Stephanie for supporting Yuri, who's our coordinator in Gaza, and now we're very happy to have Anna and Adi, who has been continuing to support Sudan to finish their HRP, which is due on the 2nd of November, and at the same time really focusing full-time on Gaza. So really, we're just very happy and appreciative of our team. So to not take any more time away, I'm going to turn over to Stephanie to give a quick update on Gaza, followed by Anna about what we see moving forward a bit. So over to you, Stephanie.
Yeah, thanks. Without giving a comprehensive update of the situation, I'll just highlight a few points that impact the ability to set up a GBV response. I'm sure that you're all following closely. As you know, there's now significant Israeli ground operations taking place alongside the intense bombardments. 13 hospitals that are still operational in northern Gaza have received repeated evacuation orders in recent days. There continues to be restricted water supply and electricity. Trucks carrying humanitarian supplies are coming in with increased volume, but it's still just absolutely far from under anything that is needed. The amounts let through are just a fraction. The GBV response to date is severely limited in its ability to provide GBV response services inside of Gaza. It's really an unprecedented situation since the large majority of GBV service providers staff is Palestinian and has been displaced themselves. So our GBV coordinator, Amira, who has been coordinating the GBV subcluster in Gaza for the past years, is displaced herself with her family. Communication channels are very unreliable and limited. With fuel shortage and electricity cuts, people do need to save their battery life. Many colleagues, regardless, have continued to work and organize, setting up basic services and response in shelters, We know of some PSS services in place. Some partners have been able to provide cash assistance as well to pre-identified vulnerable women, continued cash assistance to GBV survivors who were already in the case management system. The nationwide hotlines are still working, even though their reach is very limited, given the constricted communication lines' ability to charge phones. In terms of first response priority is really to get in dignity kits right now, but that's quite limited. Trucks carrying humanitarian supplies have been allowed to entry to Gaza through the Rafah border crossing within the last few days, but the amounts that we have are like the priorities obviously right now are much more of life-saving water and other supplies. So we are able to coordinate some of the partners that are locally procuring inside of Gaza, and then also some are coming in or are lined up, stockpiled by the border. So Yuri, our coordinator who's sitting in Gaza, she's on a conflicting call, so I'm just going to share a really quick update on the GBV subcluster response to date. She has established the national subcluster meetings. So previously you have the West Bank subcluster and the Gaza subcluster, and then very rarely the national subcluster meets all together. But now in the current situation, there's national subcluster meetings with West Bank partners and those that are operational in Gaza or have links and are in connection with partners in Gaza. The first meeting focused very much on setting up information channels to be able to quickly exchange with Gaza-based partners on the ground and get the information on what services are still available. We've created a simple WhatsApp group for quick exchanges and initiated a temporary service mapping with partners. The subcluster also developed a 2-page brief on life-saving actions for interagency GBV response. So really quite operational, update and dissemination of emergency referral pathway, provision of dignity kits, considerations around how to do no harm in the dissemination of supplies, sharing information about services, PFA trainings, etc. The protection cluster also built on that document and is extending it now. With the support of the PARC, the Policy Advocacy Reference Group, the subcluster developed an advocacy note highlighting the most critical needs and calling for ceasefire and all of the supplies to be let into the country. We've also contributed to a donor briefing that was organized by the GPC, where protection cluster and also the 4 AoRs were highlighting critical needs. Then the subcluster developed GBV messages for communities in Arabic language to be included in kits that are being disseminated, and reached out to the GBV guidelines team who kindly supported with putting together GBV risk mitigation messages for other sectors which have been disseminated widely. Meanwhile, we also have the situation in the West Bank with a rampant increase in settlers' violence. Nearly 1,000 Palestinians have been forcibly displaced from their homes since 7th of October. So the contingency planning has been activated, which means we're now focusing on service mapping, updating of service directory and contact information. And maybe here I'll hand right over to Anna Stone, who thankfully is stepping in and has been providing intense support over the past week to the Gaza team as well. So over to you, Anna, if you can provide some more info on the upcoming priorities. Thanks.
Sure. Thanks so much, Stephanie. And echoing Jennifer's thanks for your stepping in while there was a gap in the role here. So as mentioned, the availability of our typical type of interventions is really constrained, and the focus at the moment is trying to get dignity kits in. At the moment, dignity kits are for the most part using or being procured from supplies that exist already within Gaza, but those supplies will soon be depleted. We're trying to get an understanding, and UNFPA is leading on trying to understand what remains in the market, to see how long that will last in the coming days or weeks. We're trying to, working with other actors, develop a menstrual hygiene management strategy so that we can all be on the same page in terms of prioritising different items as part of the various kits, because of course we have hygiene kits, family kits, dignity kits, trying to understand where there's duplication so that we don't use up precious space on the few trucks that are able to bring in supplies into Gaza. And what we're trying to now also be doing is working with the other clusters to make sure that they are looking at their responsibilities for GBV risk mitigation. So we have calls with WASH and with Shelter, NFIs, and of course ongoing calls always with the protection and the different sub-working groups under them. We're also working on in planning, which I suppose we have to be assuming that at some point access will be possible, and trying to include already in flash appeals resources for some of those more common activities that we try to have. So establishment of safe spaces within the formal and informal shelters, as well as looking to see how do we try and be ready to support women-led organisations who we know were pre this current crisis were already providing the greater part of GBV response, particularly the MHPSS component. As Stephanie mentioned, we also have West Bank, and we've included in the flash appeal preparedness supplies for women's organisations, so solar, charging kits, credit for phones, so that hotlines can continue if we're assuming that the condition there will deteriorate and access will become more difficult. So they're really the main activities that we're planning at the moment. There's a lot of, seems silly to say it, right, but there's a lot of unknowns. And so it's about trying to plan for different scenarios. And again, as I said, hoping that access will improve so that supplies can get in and response services can start. Health has already prioritised the inclusion of the AoR kits, which is great, as well as the birthing kits as well, to try and get those in. And my understanding is that they have been prioritised. I don't think they've gone over yet in the trucks, but they have been prioritised to be part of the trucks that are crossing over at the moment. So that's basically what we're working on at the moment in planning for the next 1 to 2 months.
Thank you so much, Anna and Stephanie. And just to let you know, there was a link provided in the chat, which will link you to the briefing note that was mentioned by Stephanie, as well as the other resources that she mentioned, and we'll be continuously updating in that link. So, you know, we know that the briefing notes already has some things out of date. The situation is changing so quickly. And I think just to, in the global cluster coordination group, it's been said, you know, that this is very different in terms of our response. You know, we don't have a mold that we can use. It's changing a couple times a day, even the situation, and we're all trying to be very creative in looking at how can we provide support. And then you know, we've heard a lot of stories of individuals in Gaza continuing to work, even though the situation is absolutely horrendous and they're having to take care of their own families. But, you know, people from West Bank, for example, topping up phone cards from their friends and family in Gaza, and you know, people providing activities to children in shelters where they are sheltered themselves. So there's a lot of very local grassroots support happening with the different protection actors and different humanitarian actors that are in the country. And, you know, I think you've also heard in the news, I think as of yesterday, it was 59 UNRWA workers who'd been killed. So it's really tragic. There is a lot on the news, I'm sure you're following, but we wanted to provide you that brief update. And of course, we'll be sharing more information as we move forward. So thank you again, Stephanie and Anna. I know Anna has to run to another meeting. But Stephanie is also presenting on the next session, which is, to shift gears a bit, the long-awaited SOPs that the GBV AoR has been working on together with UNHCR to revise the SOP, standard operating procedures, which this time around we wanted to have them be a tool that is available for both refugee settings as well as IDP settings, so that GBV field actors can use them across different types of humanitarian settings. And these have been long awaited, and the rollout of them has already started, but we're very excited about this new tool. And so over to you, Stephanie. And also we have Melamir Ali, who's also presenting from UNHCR. So over to both of you.
Thanks, Jen, and thank you, Amel, for joining. It's great to be presenting this together. It was a very joint effort across GBV AoR and UNHCR. We were working very close-knit, and it's a baby that is finally here. So we're happy to present the revised GBV SOPs resource package. Shiva, if you can go to the next slide. So we'll run really quickly through what's the SOP's purpose and scope, what was the consultations revision process very quickly, and then what we really want to look at, what's in the resource package. Up next. Right, so this is just to recall what all went into the development of this package, which is a tool really that is supposed to make it easier on colleagues in the field across UNHCR, across different agencies working on IDPs, on refugee response, to be able to use one guidance and one tool and template to put together joint SOPs. So we've had a quite consultative process with a survey, desk review, group consultations, and key informant interviews to define what needs to go in there and what is latest guidance. We had group consultations and KIIs with 28 people with specialized knowledge across the different areas that you can see here. And then once we had a solid draft, we piloted it in 3 countries, Poland, Moldova, and Colombia. And based on the feedback received, we then did more revisions and finalized the package. You can go to the next slide. So here we are, what's in the SOPs resource package. It's divided in 3 parts. The first is an SOPs development guide, which discusses the process of the initiation of the SOPs. So what considerations do you need to make to define what is the scope, where does it, what does it include, which populations does it include, where in the country, and what kind of documents need to be taken in consideration, all of that. Coordination, who is coordinating the process, who's engaged, and contextualization in diverse contexts. The second part is really the key part of the resource. It's the GBV SOPs template. So that's the one draft which has different parts that are already pre-filled in and parts that need to be really discussed and contextualized in each context and then filled out, which will then be turned into the SOPs of the context. And then we have a quite long list of annexes that are supposed to make everyone's life easier in the process. So that's from TORs that are defining, that are helping put together a reference group, to budgetary considerations, to resources and other tools in the making. You can go to the next slide. So here we have a look at what is in the SOPs development guide. So just sort of going through a bit like the outline. The first point is leadership and coordination. So it looks at what to do, how to coordinate, what are considerations for coordination with governments, what to do in mixed settings, and we'll look into that one a little bit more closely later. Then what are the GBV SOPs development phases? So we try to be really brief in all of it. It's not brief overall, but I would say when you look into the different sections, it is quite short. So it really says what should be happening in which phase and just kind of break it down step by step. We'll also have a look at the different steps. Next slide. Participants give some guidance on who should be engaged. It's really quite vital what came out of our consultations, but also what we've seen across different contexts. It's vital to have a very consultative process and to make sure that the right actors are engaged during the right phases for it to not become a really heavy laborsome process, but also for it to be able to generate buy-in and also be a tool for capacity strengthening. It's necessary to engage the right people at the right times. Then there's, and this is where the guidance sort of is on when to engage everyone. And we broke it down into a table to make it like not too heavy to read through, but to just look at, okay, should I all engage and when? Then we have a section on SOPs and acute emergencies. So that is trying to give like a very quick considerations or outline of what to do, because we don't want this really long guidance and template to stop people from putting in place SOPs in acute emergencies or thinking, oh, it needs to be such a heavy process. So that part is really highlighting how it's important sometimes to just have a bare outline of the minimums and to define what can be minimums. So what needs to be included at a bare minimum at the beginning of a emergency when you're putting in place sort of like preliminary SOPs. And then there's a last page on technical guidance, which kind of gives you ideas, because we don't want to go into depth on all of the technical areas, but we want to make sure that it's included where you can find further guidance. So that's in that part. Up next. So here I just wanted to show you what are the different steps. I won't go through them piece by piece, but maybe just to highlight the preparation, then the convening of a reference group. It also gives you some guidance on who should be coordinating that, how you can maybe help not having it only on the shoulders of the GBV coordinator, but by assigning focal points, by having the reference group that is small enough to be manageable, but also engaging the right people. Work plan, situation analysis, service mapping, then the facilitation of the process of a review process of the template, finalization, signature, sort of breaking it all apart in step by step, which in practice is never quite one by one as it is, but you know, giving kind of an outline of what should all be happening, and then in practice you kind of adjust as needed. Up next. So just to highlight a few things that we want to really drive home as important points. So the recommendation is really to agree on one SOPs document that is inclusive of all affected population, people, and relevant service providers in a setting. So this is ideal, and of course it is dependent on context, and we're not saying, and I just want to clarify this because we've had the question in different forums, we're not saying that this means you have to now reinvent the wheel or like start over if you've just finished an SOPs process in your context. But if you are starting a process and you're thinking about what is the best way to do it, try to sit together with the different coordinators and stakeholders in your setting, look at what are the documents that are there, and try to see if it's possible and makes sense to have one document that is inclusive of all, and how you can engage the relevant people to make that happen. That will enhance clarity, efficiency, and coordination for all parties once you've managed to pull that together. It's also important to then develop specific SOPs for each physical setting of a location, because you might have different actors and other service providers within the location. So once you have, in an ideal world, and again, I mean, it's clear that it might be needed to be adjusted across context, but if you would have a national SOPs, you would then need to have some iterations for each location, so that it reflects the service providers in each location. And then, yeah, again, it's really important to involve all key actors in the SOPs development process for each particular location. So that's also really quite a point that we stressed throughout the development guide, and just wanted to highlight again here. And with that, I'll hand over to my lovely colleague Amel for the next part.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Can you hear me well, Jennifer? Okay, great, Stephanie. So yeah, one important, let's say, recommendation that we put in the SOPs is that one that is related to mixed settings and mixed situations. We clearly said that as much as we can, we should try to have one joint SOPs to cover all populations in one location or setting. So if the if the GBV AoR is activated, and then UNHCR is working there, also maybe in some other locations where the working group for GBV is also there, then there needs to be an agreement among several coordination structures on who should be responsible for developing the SOPs and who is best placed to lead or co-lead this process. And then that organization who has more resources or who is more in a better position to do that can then lead the process of development of the SOPs, but the SOPs should be comprehensive of all populations in the same location. Next slide. So Stephanie explained that the first part of the SOPs was the development guide. The second part, which is like the heart of the SOPs, is the template. The template is really the document that is supposed to be filled or used or completed by the operations based on the operating context. It has several sections. We try to include all the sections that are recommended for very comprehensive GBV SOPs. As Stephanie explained, in acute emergencies, we understand that this might not be possible. So there is there in the guidance a recommendation of what parts should be filled a priority in situations of acute emergency. As you can see, there are several sections in the template. Some of them are new. You might see a bit different, additional to what was in the old SOP package, including the part on SEA, risk mitigation and preparedness. The way it's organized is, there are boxes throughout the template with essential issues to consider for each of these sections that provides actually a background and other essential information to guide actors to consider specific actions, interventions, or procedures to be agreed upon in that specific setting. And of course, these boxes can be removed once the SOPs are completed. And then throughout the SOPs template, there is a blue text that indicates the information that needs to be discussed and updated or completed based on the context in which the SOP is being developed. So yeah, as Stephanie mentioned briefly, the reference group who will be leading this development. So they'll have to discuss these different sections with the members of the coordination mechanism, but also other sectors and other clusters to be able to fill this information. Next one. And then the last part of the SOPs is the annexes. We try to make it as easy as possible for colleagues to get a hold of the annexes that are needed for the development of the GBV SOPs. So all of the annexes you see, if you open the document, is really like links that you need to click on to take it directly to the document or the annex that is needed. But at the same time, we also added some other tools that are necessary. For instance, we've added tool that would be helpful for the coordination mechanism to develop the template for a GBV SOP work plan, a sample for terms of references of the SOP reference group, and then items of budget considerations. All that is very easily available for colleagues to be able to develop the SOPs. And of course, all of the technical guidance that are needed usually, each part that you see, the risk assessment, all the different technical guidance that exist, prevention, case management, CHEM, everything is there and is organized in a way that is very easily accessible. And with that, I think we're done. We'll just open the floor for some questions. I see that there are already some questions in the chat.
I think there's a lot of thank yous and hugs and kisses and yeah, good positive comments on your collaborations. And Constance had to leave, but she from UNHCR, I know, was also dealing with a lot of the admin side of all of this, but also I think there was a thank you to Tama and to was it Christy? Yeah, Kate. Yeah, so a big thank you to them as well. If anyone has a question that you want to raise verbally, we actually are doing okay on time, so feel free to just open your mic and ask a question. I know this might be quite technical for some of you. Our coordinators really appreciate this tool because they are always in every country needing to create the SOPs. So it's quite critical for them. Others of you might not understand the true value and appreciation for this new tool. And really, I think the last one was from what, 2008? 8. Okay. So imagine from 2008 to 2023. I mean, that's a huge amount of work to revise them.
Yeah.
Just to respond to a question in the chat, whether the document is available for sharing now, we have shared it in its PDF version, but we are getting it layout designed. UNHCR is currently coordinating that still. So as soon as that's revised, we'll also disseminate the revised version and put it on the website. But in the meantime, I'll put my email in the chat. Feel free to request. We've circulated it with coordinators and with the community of practice and within UNHCR. But if you haven't gotten it and you would like to see it, I'll put my email address, and I think otherwise the layout version should be coming very shortly too.
And Stephanie, do you want to say something about languages?
I wanted.
Okay, perfect. Sorry. Okay. So if you have any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and Stephanie can still respond to them. Or if you want to have a communication, you can also put your email in the chat and one of them can get in touch with you directly. Again, a huge thank you for this big piece of work. Yep. Go ahead.
Can I come in for 2 comments? So on languages, sure. We've just finalized the revision of the of the Spanish and French versions of the SOPs, so that we can share them at the moment in PDF format, pending for the design to be completed. And another comment that I wanted to make, I think for this group, and we are trying to reiterate this within our coordinators community within UNHCR, is that we need to make sure we really strive at the global level to work together and come up with this tool. And we need to make sure that the same message goes to our coordinators, as if we are in a mixed situation, that a collaboration is really needed. So we try as early as we can to see if, for instance, the GBV AoR is doing something, or the working group is doing something, and then to try as much as possible to collaborate together on this piece of work.
And there was some field testing or, early rollout. I know that in Moldova, when the whole Ukraine, the invasion of Ukraine happened, there was a request to already use it in Moldova. So they weren't exactly planned as pilots, but they ended up being places where we could have some learning from them using draft forms in the early stages. And I saw, yes, also to the Rigas and the other HCR, a lot of people reviewed and provided inputs to get them to where they are now. And this provides a nice link to our next presenters, because just to say, it was based on the good traction and the good collaboration we had on the minimum standards, where we worked also between HCR and the GBV AoR in terms of making sure that we could cover both IDP and refugee settings, that we created the minimum standards together so that we weren't creating 2 parallel pieces of work. And based on that good experience is why we decided to work on revising the SOPs together. And the next presenters, which is going to be Maureen Murphy from GWI and Fiona from Trocaire, both are core members of the GBV AoR, and I wanted to just share they're going to be presenting on the evaluation tools, the M&E that was developed to monitor and see how we're doing on the minimum standards. And so I think that's a good segue over to Maureen and to Fiona. And if you want to say anything else about yourselves, feel free. And again, if you, as you're going along, if you want to put questions already in the chat, feel free to do so. And over to you, Maureen and Fiona.
Sorry to interrupt, Jennifer. We have a
Yeah.
hand raised before we move.
Oh, sorry. Fatima. Go ahead. Over to you, Fatima.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I noticed it was not that visible, so I was trying to actually type. It's not a question, but it's a need for clarification. So I know that in Nigeria, for example, currently there is some revision work going on the SOP, and I want to understand the relationship between the global and the in-country documents that does exist. I was thinking, or I was expecting that the global was going to guide or shape how the in-country discussions and revisions will take place. But obviously, we are a bit like we are a step ahead of the global. So I don't know, is there any correlation? Is that how it's supposed to be, or am I missing something? So thank you.
Well, I think it was mentioned, but Stephanie, please feel free to step in. But we did actually, Fatima, start the rollout already because the SOPs were finished a while ago, and the reason they weren't presented yet was because the layout, the design, the translations, all of that has taken more time, but they have been being rolled out in different regions already, and it's the same SOPs, just not the final sort of design drafted version. But Stephanie, do you want to add something to that? Because this is for the context of Nigeria that Fatima is raising.
No, just to say that, Fatima, yes, the template has already been shared. So it's being used, the guidance and the template, the new package in Nigeria right now. So it's a bit delayed in the overall presentation, but at least at country level, we already managed to reach.
And I noticed that we do have PRM on our NBHA on our call, but I should say that we also appreciate the funding that was given to make this possible, and actually a number of the rollouts that already have started, like the one in Nigeria, has been because of the availability of that funding. So also a big thank you to PRM. And now, sorry?
Yeah, sorry.
Did you want to say something, Oswald?
Yeah, sorry. Just to add that Nigeria have received support from the regional and the global team also. So Amira, it is the same process, it is the same document, the same resources that we had used. Thank you.
And just to say, Oswald is our Riga, who's in Francophone, West Africa region. So yeah, he would be the one supporting Nigeria. So also, if there's other questions, Fatima, we can take them up with you later. But I know also in other regions, the rollout has already started, which is exciting. So now, sorry, Maureen and Fiona, back to both of you to say how we're doing on the minimum standards and the M&E.
No problem at all. We're happy to have time for comments and questions for all the presentations. So thank you so much, Jennifer, and for everyone here today. I'm going to be presenting here a little bit about our Making Progress Visible project, which is an M&E approach for the global GBV and emergencies minimum standards. This was definitely a collaborative effort. It was led both by GWI, who I represent, and Troka, who we'll hear from Fiona later, in partnership with Touch in South Sudan and KMSS in Myanmar. And we do, fingers crossed without technical difficulties, have some video contributions from both of them that we'll get to later in the presentation. And also just a big thanks to ELRA and their Humanitarian Innovation Fund. And I know Ian is also here from them for making this work possible. So thank you for that. So basically, the project was trying to think about M&E a little bit holistically. We knew that the GBV minimum standards had come out and had been released and had done an amazing job of actually including indicators about how to measure progress on the minimum standards as part of that document. But we were really hearing from groups in the field, from partners, from our own colleagues, that they needed further support on how to actually implement those, measure those indicators and actually be able to do M&E around the minimum standards. So we really wanted to take a two-prong approach. First, thinking at the global level, because there really wasn't a kind of common document that would bring all the GBV M&E tools and knowledge that we have together in one specific document. So we wanted to create an M&E framework that could be used for the minimum standards. But we also recognize that just creating something at the global level is not always the best way to approach M&E. So we really wanted to have a localized process where we worked in Myanmar and South Sudan with local organizations that Troca is in partnership with, to actually have them create M&E tools and processes as well. So for time, I won't go through this in detail, but just to say it was a very collaborative process. We had a virtual survey that I know many of you filled out, speaking about your needs and priorities when it comes to GBV M&E. And then we also did deep consultations on the country level for our two specific countries that we were working with, but we hope are relevant for the rest of you as well. And then we also had a piloting process where we actually tried to have our local partners try out some of the M&E tools that they were developing, with a focus not just on collecting data, but also how you use it, how you make decisions with it, what are simple ways that frontline workers can better understand and use data around M&E. And all of that learning really fed into the development of the overall M&E framework. So we did a lot of global literature reviews as well to try to build out the evidence that we have, to make sure that we were reflecting the great work of many of you on this call and all around the world. We really didn't want to reinvent the wheel with this process. We were really trying to highlight good and existing M&E processes and tools where they currently exist, and linked them in our framework. And also, of course, give you all credit for the tools that you have developed. A few of the main ones we've looked at were here, but many, many others were looked at as well. So the final toolkit, it is available on the AoR's website and also on GWI's website. And overall, the structure is really quite simple. We have, a basic introduction to the document. We tried to actually bring the minimum standards together with an actual kind of theory of change. What are we trying to do with the minimum standards? How do all of these 16 standards link together to actually be meaningful? Of course, talking about data, we know ethics and safety are huge considerations. So of course, we reflect a bit on that, as well as GBV M&E and the M&E cycle overall. But really the core of the document is actually tables that go through each minimum standard and actually really try to pull out the indicators and give you more information on how to use them. So again, I'm not going to go through this in detail. You'll read it on your own, I'm sure. But at the beginning of this, we have a little table that sort of gives you some information about what's going to come. We do not expect that you are going to read this document from front to back. No expectation of that. We've really tried to structure it. So if you're interested in psychosocial support, you can go straight to the front and you can click on psychosocial support, and it will just take you to those tables where it's actually going to give you information about how we define our indicators, how we might be able to measure them, and actually links to M&E tools that exist. Not every indicator has a great tool. So some of them, unfortunately, we couldn't link anywhere, but wherever we could, we tried to link out to an actual tool that you can use. So this is just an example. If we look at minimum standard 4, which is around healthcare, at the beginning of each of our tables, it looks just like this, where we try to, again, put a little bit of a framework around this. We try to have what are the outputs the standard is trying to achieve, and those are all in blue, and those link directly to a pre-existing indicator from the minimum standards. So anything that's in blue is in that minimum standards document that you all know, and is really a core, what we call a core indicator for this process. But also as part of this, we were really trying to think, well, what else could we measure? If you have a robust M&E system and you want to start looking, say, more at outcome level indicators, we've also added some additional recommended indicators in green. And that's how each of the different standards are laid out. And then we go into more specific detail about each indicator. So just again, as an example, this one's from the healthcare one, and it's about all health facilities having trained staff, sufficient supplies and equipment. We have the numerator and the denominator for that. We give a little bit of guidance on how to measure, recognizing that this is a global tool and will look different a little bit in each context. So it has to be a bit general. We try to give you some just sort of traffic light system. Are you close to meeting the standard? Are you working towards it? Are you really, really failing? Again, just to give you some sense, how should I be interpreting this data? And like we said, you can actually link straight onto an existing tool or a tool that we created through this process in order to see that. So that's how the minimum standards, or the M&E framework document works. We hope it's really easy for you to use. And I'm now going to be passing it over to my colleague Fiona in a minute, who's going to talk a little bit about how it worked on the country level. But just to say, we recognize that this is a living document, and as more M&E tools appear, we really want to be able to update that. And also just to recognize that, it's a global level document. And so contextualization and adaptation at country level is essential, which is what Fiona's going to talk about a little bit. So I'll pass to you.
Thanks so much, Maureen. And I'm just popping the links to the frameworks in the chat. So we have the M&E framework there in English, French, and Spanish, which is the direct links for each of those. So in this part of the presentation, we wanted to focus in on the co-design process. So the process that we engaged in Myanmar and South Sudan, looking at user-centered design. So mainly working with GBV caseworkers and psychosocial facilitators who work within women and girls safe spaces to really center their experience and understand the perspective of frontline staff and what works best for them in terms of M&E processes. So we were particularly interested in their ownership and leadership over the process, particularly when it came to safety, ease of use. So how easy it was to use the different tools in terms of data collection, but also kind of crucially analysis, where there can often be additional barriers, and also the development of tools that group of service providers felt were culturally appropriate and would inform their decision making, so would be useful to them in their day-to-day service provision. So by centering this kind of focus, we're trying to ensure that these processes are as close as possible to service provision and as close as possible to our participants who are engaging in programs. So we have some videos, one from Myanmar, one from South Sudan. So just to say, we're going to play this video from Myanmar. We have Gumpang Ong, who's presenting here, and this is a presentation that he developed today with Mar Lat, Mary Senkam, and Ban Tue. And they're all very sorry that they can't join due to time zone differences. So I'm going to pop their emails in the chat in case anyone wants to follow up with them directly. Thank you.
And we're going to try the video, fingers crossed I can make the technology work. So just give me 1 second.
Hello, nice to meet you, everyone. My name is Kumpano. I'm an M&E officer from KMSS Mijina. Today, I would like to take you a quick moment from the time for the briefing of this PowerPoint presentation. So let's jump to the introducing. With the support of GWI in Myanmar, Choke is partnered with KMSS Mijina and piloted the AoR project to design and testing the tools. We are focusing on testing tools in the targeted project areas. Those were Palana 2 camps, Trinity Camp, Jomasa Camp, Waimau KBVC Camp, and Waimau LBC Camp. Those were within in Mijina Township and Waimau Township. We are designed and piloted the finalized tools. Those were satisfaction and psychosocial support service provided. Tool number 2 coping capacity. 3, psychosocial support service established. 4, staff safety and well-being. 5, referral pathways and SOPs. 2, testing. We faced with a lot of challenges. Our innovation involved user-centered design and piloting of tools by frontline KMSS GBV response staff due to the coup in Myanmar on February 1st, 2021. Escalating conflict and insecurity and COVID-19, we experienced significant challenges in traveling between project locations as our areas of work were affected by active conflicts. We transitioned to remote piloting of the tools. We use mobile phones to maintain contact with staff, volunteers, and participants based in different project sites. Mobile networks were unreliable during those times, and we have to call many times to pilot the tools over the phone. We also provide coaching to community-based staff and volunteers to pilot observational elements of the tools. Our ability to pilot these tools in this situation demonstrated the suitability of the tools we designed for acute emergency settings. Success. Frontline GBV and MNE staff developed new tools for 5 selected minimum standard indicators. As the success, these tools are useful and effective because of the tools are developed by frontline GBV response staff who are working in communities and understanding their practice use. The tools that we designed through this project include dashboard analysis sheets, which are very effective, reduce time consumption on data analysis, and provide programs staff with the information that they need to inform decision in timely manner. One tool designed to measure organizational progress on staff care and staff well-being was piloted with senior management of KMSS and other agencies working in kitchen. This contributed to critical conversation and changes in practice. As an impact, tool number 4, staff safety and well-being, and tool number 5, referral pathways and SOPs were piloted with other humanitarian agencies working in kitchen states. These inform decisions making and result in specific actions from senior management within these organizations, including developing staff safety and well-being plans and allocating budget lines to implementation of these plans. This was particularly significant given the deteriorating security situation. The new satisfaction tools, which use visual methods and emojis, was preferred by participants, and these lead to wider adaptation and use of these tools across different types of services in our GBV programming. The use of Kobos and Kumcare's version of the tools was useful and appropriate. The project also contributed to closer working relationships between the GBV's teams and the MIL team, and increased understanding, engagement, and interest in M&E progress. This is all of my presentation, and I would like to end this presentation, and thank you for your all attention.
And we'll also play a short video from South Sudan, and here you'll hear Kade Betty Kenny, who works with CAFON and Trocran Partnership in South Sudan, and also from Daniel and Alwell from Touch in South Sudan as well.
Hello everyone, this is the South Sudan team. CAFON and Trocra in partnership together with our partner Touch, presenting on this wonderful project that we completed here. So we started this project in 2020 with a design workshop with the frontline workers. And these are the PSS facilitators and the case workers. We also had our partners in the GBV working group that were active in the referral system that also got involved in this designing phase. Yeah. So after the completion of the design phase, which was specifically for prioritized indicators in the GBV minimum standards, we piloted these tools in Huron East, yeah, with a sample size that was good at the time to test these tools. So when we tested, we also moved into a validation workshop with the national GBV AoR, with our frontline workers, and some few partners from Europe East to identify areas of gaps that needs changes. So this was done, and now we have the tools finalized and being used in South Sudan. Up to this stage, Alwell, you can come in, and Alwell is our case worker in Europe East. And at the time when we started this project, she was a PSS facilitator. So she started this project through and now rolling out the tools. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Betty. We have successes during the development of these tools, and one of them was engagement with different partners such as GBV last time, GBV AoR, GBV National Subcluster, case workers, and PSS facilitators in the development of tools and in shaping the tools. The feedback workshop helped further in streamlining the tools through support of Tropia and Concord, HQ, GWI, and the CTP country office. During that, we had some challenges. The translation challenge, linked with other institutes such as University of Juba College of Language, and this process was quite longer than we expected. We had the challenge of staff turnover, the innovation project. The project engaged more key staff who kept the process moving forward despite the turnover. On that, we had some impact. It was easy and simple to analyze information collected in the program. Feedback received using the tools are not only used by management, but also frontline staff to inform programming that increase impact. Provides result-based and informative report to inform further improvement, especially for Gaza. The tools are currently used in all CTP-funded and partner programs, shared with partners for adoption of the tools. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. As the project manager during this process from the initial to now, and on behalf of Deutsche South Sudan, in the name of Marco Madud, the Executive Director of Deutsche, I would like to give thanks and appreciate EWI and all the partners that involved in all the processes because of the support they render to us, and also the technical inputs they have added. And as a recommendation, now these tools are being implemented by Deutsche, and they are equally very good. And as such, I recommend that in future we'll have some projects that we can implement to make sure these tools are disseminated, these tools are made familiar, not only by Deutsche South Sudan, but also other partners that may be implementing GBV in South Sudan. Thank you.
I think a really key thing that came out of both those presentations was the importance and centrality of collaboration. So working very closely with the GBV subcluster in both contexts, and that would have been at national level, but also at subnational level. So in Ural in South Sudan and in Kachin State in Myanmar, and also very close engagement with peer agencies and other GBV service providers in both of those contexts. And then at global level as well, as Maureen said, how engaged all of you were from the survey, from the very beginning right through, and multiple rounds of reviews. So we really do appreciate all of that. We did ask a lot of people's time. So yeah, much appreciated. Just to say as well that the country level tool creation, so the design, piloting, revision, finalization process, it was a challenging process. It was a particularly challenging time in both contexts as well to be doing that work, but it was incredibly valuable. and frontline service providers really got a huge amount out of the process, and felt a real sense of engagement and meaningful participation in the process, and a real sense of ownership over the tools. And we've really seen that come through in terms of a range of different types of programming and engagement with different partners and different agencies. So that's been a really important strength of the project. The ownership and use of the tools does increase by going through that kind of process. And just to say as well that within the M&E framework, all these tools are linked and available, and would be really keen to see how further adaptation and contextualization might look in different contexts. You'll see on the right here, this is an image that's used within one of the tools that explores the extent to which psychosocial services meet psychosocial need for participants. And so this tree is one way of exploring these issues, and you'll see these are the 5 essential elements, or the 5 key feelings within psychosocial support. So different ways of exploring how participants feel, or whether participants feel that some of these elements have been present in the psychosocial support that they receive. The cow image that you saw in South Sudan is another one. A body map was the third. So there were kind of 3 options provided. And so many of these tools, there may be particular images or approaches that might work well in one context, but there might also be adaptations or alternatives that might work well in another. So keeping that flexibility and the ability to adapt and contextualize is really important. And that's it really. We'll wrap up, and just to say we're really interested in further engagement on this. The links are there, and they're also in the chat for the M&E frameworks, framework in English, French and Spanish. And we would be really interested in further conversations. We've been having a lot of conversations about rollout, uptake, dissemination, and interested in continuing that as well. Thank you very much.
So can I just say, I loved the contextualized tree into a cow. I had noticed that, and I thought that was brilliant.
Very important in South Sudan.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking. It's so perfect. So we're now opening, we're actually, considering we squeezed Gaza into the beginning, we're doing okay with time. I see Carmen has her hand up. If you have a question, I didn't see questions in the chat. I saw, again, lots of appreciation. Catherine Poulton thanked you for bringing the voices from the field. I almost felt like when each video stopped, I needed to like thank them, and because their voices were so like the same as everybody else's, so I felt like I needed to be like, thank you. And then I was like, oh, it's a recording. But if you have a question, you want to write it into the chat, or you can just take off your mic and speak. But Carmen, or you can raise your hand. Carmen, you have your hand up, so to you first.
Thank you so much. And just to say, I also love the cow. This was really good. I'm taking it as a note. It's half a question, half a suggestion maybe to see, or yeah, a question if it would be okay to connect you with our colleagues in the MHPSS M&E Helpdesk, because they're doing all of the support at country level on implementing our MHPSS M&E framework, and I'm sure that more than once they come to the intersection of our sectors. So I think bringing them together will be quite useful. So yeah, I see I'm a little bit of nodding. So I hope I can do that. Yeah,
yes,
Fiona.
Absolutely, please do. We'd love that. Yeah, that'd be a really good conversation.
Brilliant. And maybe just to leave it. Wait, I muted myself.
Yes.
Just to leave it in here as well in the chat, because I think to those tools that you've highlighted, the many means of verifications that we added to the to our M&E framework, I think it will be also good to hear, are they useful for your sector? I mean, is this not that I'm asking you to review, but I think that this is a good opportunity to come together, review each other tools and see how they can help us in our interactions. So yeah, I'll put you in contact with our M&E colleagues, and I think this could be another great opportunity to collaborate. And having seen my colleagues developing our M&E framework over years, really congratulations, because we know, especially when you do so much bottom up and you check with country level so much, it's a big intake. So congrats, and looking forward to bringing them together.
That's great. Thank you, Carmen.
And for those of you who don't know Carmen, she's from the MHPSS reference group, which is the cross-cutting MHPSS across the different clusters. So just to introduce her, and she's from IFRC. Anybody else want to ask a question? You can take off your mic or raise your hand. We do have time for another question or comment if you'd like to make a comment. If you were part of the process and you wanted to say something from your perspective, we know a lot of people on this call I know one of our IMs, Jay, worked a lot with this team, who is now actually in Bangladesh. So yeah, anyone else want to say something or ask a question? Emily, over to you.
Hi, yeah, super thanks for this. We've actually included some of the indicators in a proposal we're writing right now. I just saw that it came out and it's been really helpful already. I know that in one of the presentations they mentioned, I think in Myanmar, a dashboard analysis to do the analysis of the data. Is that something that is available as part of the toolkit, or is that something that is going to be a resource available?
Yes, they are linked in general, but I will just send them around to this group afterwards, just so you guys have them all in a package, both the actual tools and the dashboards that we have available, because they were developed in Excel, but now they're like in a Google Sheet for access issues. They might not work perfectly on the Google Sheet version. So we can definitely share both. And just as I noted in the chat, Global Communities had many tools, particularly the Whole of Syria M&E toolkit that we referenced quite a lot in the M&E framework. So thank you for your great work on this.
Glad it was useful. Thanks.
And our monthly update is going to be coming out soon. So I think there will be information also available there with some of the links. If not, we will include it before it goes out, so that that's another reference point. So if there's not anything else, I think we'll go to our last agenda point. Last chance to raise your hand or write a question in the chat. You can continue to appreciate the hard work. You don't have to stop just when we switch to other speakers. Or if you have a question that occurs to you, feel free. So now we're going to turn over to the GBV AoR Helpdesk, which we continue to celebrate and promote whenever we have an opportunity. So we wanted to, we have included an ongoing space in our monthly update, which I just mentioned, which Shiva from our team is the one that puts that together. And we also try to include in our occasional monthly calls, so that if you don't know the help desk, you learn about it. Again, you can also reach out to us. It's available. You can find out more information on our website. So over to Joanne Creighton and Jean Ward. You probably have known or heard of at least one of the two of them, who are the ones who are coordinating our help desk. Just to remind everyone that the GBV AoR help desk is managed by UNICEF. I think Catherine Bolton is still on the call. And we have an advisory group that is together with our coordination team. And we also have the community of practice, which we had present in a former call. So over to you, Jean and Joanne.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, and a big thank you to the GBV AoR coordination team for the opportunity to present today. It's great to be with you all. And I'm here together with my colleague Jean to provide you with an update on some of our latest products, also how you can contact us and reach out for help should you require some support directly from us, and also a little bit of a flavor of some of our upcoming products that we will be releasing later this year. So for those of you that may not know me, I'm the Help Desk Program Director, and I'm joined by my colleague Jean Ward, who is our Senior Advisor. Jean, would you like to come on and say hi?
Hey, everybody. Weirdly, I can't see myself in this, so I don't know if you've got video, but hi, everybody. It's nice to be on the call with you. And thanks for all these very interesting presentations. It's really great to see all the work that's being done.
Great, thank you so much, Jean. Jean is critical to our success at the GBV AoR Helpdesk, and she really supports in providing strategic technical level guidance and quality assurance to the products that we produce. Please allow me briefly, for those of you that the help desk may be new for you, to just let you know that our services are free and confidential. Thank you, Jennifer, for letting everybody know in the chat that yes, we're supported by UNICEF and also receive funding support from BPRM. So thank you so much for helping us to be able to offer and provide this service. We focus on providing technical advisory and research support services for all humanitarian actors working on GBV risk mitigation, prevention and response at all levels. So please do feel free to reach out to us. We like to say that no question is too small or too large for us. So please do go ahead and make contact with us. We know that everybody's plates are full. And as we've heard from some of the presentations today, in acute emergencies, often it's all hands on deck and all support is necessary and needed. So please do feel free to contact us if you think that we can be of assistance to you. We have a roster of experts who are all vetted and very well seasoned and experienced, so we can call upon their support. Next slide, please, Shiva. So please allow me now to give you a little bit of a rundown of what we've produced so far this year. This is just a snapshot of our published products. We do always seek permission from and approval from the requester, as we are a confidential service, to see if they feel confident and comfortable for us to publish any of the written work. As I'm sure you will appreciate, some people do reach out to us for organizational level support, and so that's why we publish on a request basis. But so far this year, we have produced a tip sheet around community-based resolution mechanisms, some of the risks that publicly visible women face and from technology-facilitated gender-based violence. We've produced an evidence digest, which we really hope will be a very useful tool in really promoting an acceleration of localization and support for local women's organizations. We have also made sure that we are supporting our colleagues in the GBV subclusters by providing some secondary data reviews for Lebanon and Niger. These secondary data reviews we've supported as the help desk when there have been challenges perhaps or staffing gaps in relation to information management positions. We know that that can be often a challenge, and so we're very happy to provide that additional support where we can. These are quite comprehensive review reports and follow a specific process that our colleagues have a specific template for. We've also produced quite recently, and we will be going into more detail on these two products for you shortly, a learning brief which is focused on finding ways and means to deliver gender-based violence programming in hostile environments. And I'll say a little bit more about what we mean by a hostile environment soon. But the objective of this learning brief is very much recognizing the complexity of many acute emergencies now, where there is often a high level of restriction on women and girls' human rights, and also indeed on women's human rights defenders and GBV actors. And what does it mean to be able to stand in solidarity and continue to deliver GBV programming in such circumstances? We've also, hot off the press, produced a learning brief around GBV and artificial intelligence. There's a lot, I'm sure everybody's hearing all the noise around artificial intelligence. And so this learning brief really seeks to be a primer or an accessible way into understanding AI and what this could mean for us as we are trying to continue to provide GBV services. So my colleague Jean will be discussing that paper in a little more detail for you shortly. Next slide, please, Shiva. So as promised, a little bit more detail on our recent learning brief around delivering GBV programming in hostile environments. As mentioned, we noticed that there are an increasing number of environments where there is a lot of backlash against women and girls' human rights and women's human rights defenders, women's rights organizations, and GBV actors. So we wanted to really respond and produce a paper that will really discuss the range of strategies and methods that humanitarian actors can use to support and sustain GBV response and prevention programming in such environments. In the paper, we explain what we mean by a hostile environment and why it's important for GBV program managers and service providers to really be able to identify and adapt to rapid or indeed incremental changes in the operating environment, which lead to increased hostility. We know that sometimes there can be rapid escalations, but at the same time, sometimes there are piecemeal incremental changes that could be monitored for. And the purpose of the paper is really to sort of map out what a hostile environment it can be characterized by. Some of these features might, or there may be more than one feature applicable, but these might include an erosion of women and girls' rights through rollbacks and active repression of women and girls, such as women and girls facing punishment and violence for simple everyday activities that are normal human behaviors, such as studying, working, singing, dancing, these types of behaviors. Also could be a feature of a hostile environment, the absence of laws or other protections for women and girls' rights that lead to impunity for acts of GBV. Also, a lack of enforcement of any existing law and protection for women and girls' rights that again leads to this impunity for acts of GBV. Where there is retaliation, or which is either led or condoned by those in power against women and girls who attempt to assert or defend their human rights. And where there is repression and violence against NGOs, CSOs, civil society, INGOs who are delivering basic goods and services and programs that are benefiting women and girls. Additionally, we notice that there is a correlation of repression and violence, not only against women and girls' rights, but a correlation also against backlash against LGBTQI populations or sexual and reproductive health and rights. And so it's important that we draw attention to this and are aware of this as a feature of hostile environments. And of course, there is often a general normalization of violence and the presence of secret police or military juntas, who are monitoring women and girls' movements and behavior, and a generalized proliferation of small arms amongst the civilian population. So these were the identified from the literature and also from practice-based learning observations around what can contribute to a hostile environment for women and girls' human rights, and therefore also make it hostile to GBV, i.e. programming. Of course, these features also link to authoritarian, totalitarian, and non-democratic regimes and lead to an increased likelihood of backlash and is often fueled by anti-feminist or misogynistic ideologies spread through orchestrated campaigns, as well as ad hoc public rhetoric and actions. So the learning brief discusses some of the risks that women and girls face in these high-risk environments, and then goes on to explain how we can do programmatic risk analysis, risk management and contingency planning to factor for some of the risks that are featured within a hostile environment. The paper also then goes into and specifies some key considerations for GBVIE specialists and breaks those down by response, prevention, coordination, and advocacy functions. And finally, we included, as we thought it was important to draw attention to some particular country case studies This is not to say that there are not other countries that are also affected by such repression and hostility towards women's and girls' human rights, but just to make sure that we did ground this in the lived experiences of women and girls in some of the countries around the world that are experiencing this. So the paper is intended to provide useful information. Hopefully, it is definitely probably not exhaustive, but we do hope that the findings and conclusions will be useful and relevant, and as I say, have been based both on relevant literature and research, as well as practice-based learning. And I'll now hand on to my colleague, Jean Ward, to speak to us about the paper that she led around AI and GBV. Over to you, Jean.
Great, thanks, Joanne. So as Joanne said, there's been a lot of noise around AI and how it links to GBV, both in terms of risks and opportunities. And so we wanted to draft a kind of preliminary learning brief on the links between GBV and AI, looking both at those risks and the opportunities. We also just wanted to provide a primer to GBV actors who may not be familiar with even just the basic sort of AI terminology and some of the kind of language and approaches around AI, just to provide that a basic kind of reference on key terms and concepts. So that's what the paper starts with. It starts with the, sort of defining AI, and then some of the related terminology, things like deep fakes and terms that even I, before I started working on this paper, didn't know. So it was a really actually very instructive process for me to draft the paper. And although there's not a lot of information available in humanitarian contexts, there is information available in other contexts about how AI can exacerbate the risks of GBV. And so there's some, there's some investigation into development and some humanitarian context about that particular issue. But then as well, there's kind of reflections on how AI can be used to actually address GBV and some of the work that's being done. There's one particular interesting example that some of our colleagues put us in touch with, which is coming out of Turkey, and that is a proposal to develop essentially a sort of GBV specific chat GPT that is it compiles all of those GBV sort of the vetted GBV guidance into one database, and then any GBV actor can go to the database and ask questions to the databases as you would chat GPT, but with the confidence that what is generated is comes specifically from guidance that we know and trust. So that's just just one example of a kind of exciting an exciting project in the pipeline using AI. There is global sort of guidance and approaches that exist that address kind of the ethics and safety issues around AI. And so the paper also tries to identify those for GBV actors, some of the key things that GBV actors need to consider when using AI, or thinking about using AI, like data protection and how to use AI within a human rights framework, and thinking about sort of user-centered engagement and consent, and looking at issues of bias, all these things that we as you know, as GBV actors, as we expand into the AI world, really need to kind of approaches that safety and ethical approaches that we need to reinforce that are so fundamental to doing work on GBV. So that's it. It's just a primer. It's just to sort of get us started thinking, and hopefully we'll, you know, generate new ideas and possibilities about how we can start to use AI a bit more to facilitate our work. Thanks, Joanne. So back over to you.
Thank you very much, June. So just now, very quickly, just to give you a little flavor about what we have coming up the rest of this year. So watch this space, and we'll be, of course, thanks to our AOR colleagues in advance, who I'm sure will be putting these publications in their monthly roundup when they're out. We have an annotated bibliography coming up around collective care processes and practices, recognizing the 16 days of activism are coming up. And it's really, really important that we take care of ourselves and each other during this intensive period. Also a tip sheet for technical advisors. Primarily it will be the audience for this around technical monitoring site visits and what to look for. Also another tip sheet around the humanitarian development peace nexus, as well as a knowledge product around applying feminist principles in humanitarian response. So you now might be wondering how can you find some of our products, and we have our products available and widely disseminated both on the GBV AoR website and also on the Social Development Direct website. Social Development Direct operates the help desk on behalf of UNICEF and the GBV AoR. I will put the web links in the chat box shortly. They're also available on the next slide, so you can see what those websites look like here and what to look for. And you can filter and search for your publications by keywords and different themes according to each website library. Next slide, please, Shiva. And finally, just to say, please do contact us if your plate is full or if you're looking for specific research and advisory support or technical guidance. We do provide a range of different forms of support, and we can also link you to relevant colleagues. And we do work closely with colleagues at the GBV AoR and also Riga's to make sure that we are connecting people and providing the correct people are providing the relevant support to you to meet your needs. If you do contact us between Monday and Friday, we will aim to respond to you within 24 hours to acknowledge your request and let you know how we're going to manage that for you. So thanks very much. Back to you, Jennifer. And if we have time, I'm very happy to answer any questions colleagues may have.
Thank you. So if you have a question, please go ahead and raise your hand or take off your mic. And I was just going to ask you, Shiva, to remove the PowerPoint. Can we just do a quick, if you have used the help desk ever, can you put a little clapping emoji into your space so we can just see hands of people who have used the help desk in any way? Does that work? Yeah. Emily Krasner. I know, Catherine. I was going to say, Catherine, you better put your hand up. Guessing Fiona might have used it at some point, just to see. But yeah, just I put in the chat. It's open to everybody, and don't feel like, oh, I don't know how to ask the question. I mean, they're great. Like when you have a question, somebody will contact you and sort of help you develop your question because they want to make sure they get it right. They don't want to answer the wrong question. Like they don't want to come back and say, and have you say like, oh, that's not what I meant, you know? So really they'll call, they'll help you formulate. And, you know, we find that a lot of people share similar questions. So if you raise a question, you're probably raising it for others. And that's why we make all of the responses available to everybody. And then we have the more sort of in-depth technical pieces. You know, there's been like on climate change. I think one of the favorites, and actually, John is thinking we need to update this one. we did put together one, and I don't know, Fatima, if you've used this one, but it was so that everyone doesn't always depend on pooled funding within women-led organizations. We had a document that was very popular. We translated it to different languages. That was foundations that give funding to small women's organizations, so that you're not thinking like OCHA is the only solution or pooled funds are the only solution. And actually, I was looking at the date of that last one. I think we could update that one. It was very popular because it gave all kinds of like ideas for foundations that provide funding for women-led organizations. And then just to say, please do share with your working groups, with your networks, to let them know that this resource is available. But I don't want to take away. Fatima, are you raising your hand now because you're going to ask a question? Fatima is our coordinator in Yemen, our co-coordinator. Do you want to go ahead and take off your mic and speak?
Hi, Jennifer. Hi, everyone. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, your voice is great. Thanks. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to give you like a brief our experience with the help desk, because I have already shared this link to our partners. But then, to be honest, you know that Yemen is so complicated situation, and they focus more in details. Then there is like some document, including like LGBT and so on. So I received like many calls, such a link, why you are sharing this and so on. So I have to be careful in Yemen, as you know, because this link include many documents and so on. This is why first, when I receive like a document, I have to search about this LGBTQ, because you know it's not allowed to say this in Yemen, and also it's going to put us in a risk, in a very high risk. And I told you that before, I share one document according this help desk, and I receive a lot of problems and so on. So then I just apologize, and from that time I start to download the document looking for any sensitive word, then I share it with our partners. This is our experience with this link. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Fatima, for raising that. If what we could do for you in these cases is, if there is a particular product that you see mentioned in the AoR newsletter that you think that's useful, that could be useful for me, but you're worried to click on the link, feel free to email the help desk, and then that will remind us, and we can perhaps look through the Word version and redact any sensitive word for you if you still, if where that's possible, so that you can have an edited version that then may be of use for you to be able to disseminate in country. We will be happy to support with that. So do always feel free to contact us when you see a product in the AoR newsletter that you think would be helpful.
And just a reminder on the languages, because we have, really put in effort to, if you write a question in a different language, you can have a response in that language, because there are people in the roster from different language backgrounds. But also, if there's a document you feel like is really relevant to your area, I'm thinking also Oswald here, who's our Riga and Francophone Africa, but also in Latin America, we've done some translations through the help desk on documents produced by the help desk. We're not going to start translating any document that needs to be translated. That's yeah, and then also the support to women-led organizations. So there's a lot of great benefits. And just to say that the help desk has changed since it was started some years ago, and that's been based on feedback. So your feedback is really critical. And, if we find that there's a better use, like if, like things like we've done more shorter products rather than longer products, or look at how to do some coaching and mentoring to women-led organizations, or looked at how to improve languages that are available. Like all of these changes have happened because of feedback from our users. So, please do keep that. That feedback can go to Jean and Joanne, or it can come to us at the AoR, or it can go to coordinators that you can then share with us. And finally, just to say, Joanne is available to come to your GBV subcluster group and give a presentation to your members about what the help desk offers, and that has worked in a couple of different countries quite well. So really, there's a lot of flexibility and trying to respond and really cater. And like you know, really our primary focus is people in the field, because we know people don't have a lot of time and we want to make information available to you. And if you ask a question where there's already information available, they'll let you know what that information is. It's not always about writing something new. Sometimes it's about just saying, hey, this exists already. Maybe this is what you're looking for. So that's the end of our call. Sorry, we're 5 minutes over. But I'm glad that we got so many people with the time difference. This is that weird week where there's where time changes in Europe and not in US, and yet there's other countries that never change time. So then we become 2 hours difference instead of an hour. So thank you all for joining and for figuring out the time. Thanks to Google Calendar that helps us do that. Yeah, so I don't know if last chance for anyone, can I, just because I think things are so tough right now, and I've been in other calls where it's really nice if people can just open their cameras so we can say goodbye to each other, seeing each other's faces. I feel like we need so much kindness right now. The world is really challenging. So if everyone could just turn on their camera so we can see each other and see this wonderful group of people, and just remember we all need to be kind to each other right now, because it's tough. And I know some colleagues here have people in Gaza that they're worried about, and Sudan that's kind of being forgotten but hasn't gotten better, and so many emergencies that everyone is working hard, and people are exhausted. So let's just remind ourselves to be kind. Thank you. It's great to see your faces, and maybe we can just do our little kudos to everyone. Lots of love. And thanks for all those positive comments in the chat to all the different presenters. I think that's really sweet as well. And we always are open to feedback as well from all of you. So if you remember also that these calls that are monthly are open for you also to present from, you know, new tools, new standards, a mission that you went on, new learning that you have. I think we have a call coming up where we'll share on 16 days. Is that true, Shiva? We often do that.
Yeah, sure.
So
We will announce.
we will announce. Okay. Thanks, everyone, and have a good morning, afternoon, evening, night, wherever your time zone is. Bye.
Bye.
Ciao, ciao.
Thank you.
Bye.